Jim, I get to host it.
I'm just
Oh,
gonna,
yeah,
I'm
I
just gonna
know.
stack them up. There you go. So everyone can see them for the visual show. I realize it's not as much fun on the radio, holding up the titles of your books and showing the covers
Yes.
and all that stuff. So
Yes,
radio
and
listeners
and
will
I
want to get them.
and I would show you my personal library that has a hole for the Jim Geraghty selection that has not yet arrived, but that would be a
Dwayne,
waste of precious.
I'll send the books to you, but not to Hugh. How does that sound? How does that work?
That sounds like a good plan, actually. That would be kind of fun, actually, to do that. So my days is going great, right? I get to fill into the big chair and host a show, so it's always a special day for me. And then I get the glorious news that mid-show that Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski, announced on MSNBC this morning that they visited Hitler's bunker at Mar-a-Lago. And then, as if the day couldn't get any better, I see this tweet from Crystal Ball, their former colleague on MSNBC, who writes this just a few minutes ago. More than any other media hosts, these two, meaning Joe and Mika, are responsible for the Dem Party's disastrous obsession with Liz Cheney never-Trumpers over the working class and the destruction of the class-first Bernie movement. Now that they've helped usher the fascists in, they go and kiss the ring. Disgusting. Jim Geraghty, it's when you've gaslit people that much, that hot for that long, when you turn the flame off, it's gonna mess people up for a while, isn't it?
So Dwayne, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So these are the people who were crying on air, weren't they? That
Yes,
this was
because
the end.
women were dying.
Okay,
We're going to die because of this.
So I want to point out, way back in 2016, really 2015, in the run-up to the primaries, Joe and Mika had Trump on there. And remember, nothing too hard, Mika, right? That he got softball interviews
Yes,
on Morning Joe back in 2015. They
right.
loved him. They,
Because they didn't think
they
he had
thought
a prayer.
yeah, back when he was going to be the easiest, person for Hillary to defeat. And of course, he was this ratings magnet. Every time Trump was on a
Yep.
morning show, you knew he was going to say something crazy, and it was going to, people tuned in just to see what Trump was going to say. And then they turned into leaders of the resistance, and they were, adamantly, MSNBC was indistinguishable from the, internal programming of the Democratic National Committee. And now they went to Mar-a-Lago. But remember when Trump tweeted, like she had said something critical, and he talked about her plastic surgery. It was this weird,
Yeah.
nasty,
Yeah.
ludicrously and I remember thinking at the time, I know the Hugh Hewitt listenership doesn't like the fact that I'm never Trump, but I'm going to point out that, like, when you're president of the United States, you really shouldn't lose any sleep over what Mika Brzezinski is saying about you. You really shouldn't care that much. You should just go out and do your job, let the chips fall where they may, do what you think is right, and just accept the fact that a bunch of days Mika Brzezinski is going to be really upset with you. And instead, this clearly got under Trump's skin. Now you're going to hear, oh, Trump doesn't care what the media thinks. Why is he inviting Joe and Mika to Mar-a-Lago then? Clearly, he cares about what these people think. Clearly, he's still obsessed with what gets said about him on television.
Well, you can make that claim, and I'm sure there's probably something to that. But don't you think there was probably an enjoyment factor from Donald Trump to have them have to come to him and grovel?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things where, as much as like, for all their arguments that you made the reference to Hitler's bunker, that he's the the autocrat, the authoritarian, he's going to end American democracy. Sure, we'll come down and hang out at Mar-a-Lago. Sounds fun, it was. Remember, these people were furious with Jimmy Fallon for having him on his show in like fall of 2016 and messing with the hair and
Yeah.
the previous year Trump had hosted Saturday Night Live, and there was kind of this question of like, if Trump is the real, David Duke, if Trump is this, irredeemable villain in public life, why does NBC keep inviting him on their shows? Why is he celebrated as, of course he worked on NBC for a whole bunch of years. So there's this contradiction there. Now, I can understand any journalist saying, anytime you get a chance to talk to Donald Trump, he will generate news. There's an argument to be said that simply for news value, if you get a chance. But as I understand, as you're describing it, Dwayne, this wasn't an on-camera interview. This is just hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, right?
Yeah, this they put out feelers to see if he would entertain, because they want to have some access to the next administration over the next 4 years, because NBC otherwise is going to be locked out, right? They're going to have no access at all to this administration. And so Joe and Mika were at least trying to play, 1.5D chess and say, could you at least entertain us and we can maybe talk things out and maybe open up lines of communication again? And Trump's like, sure, come on down.
That is really fascinating. I think the crystal ball assessment there, and we should emphasize, former MSNBC host Crystal Ball, not
Right.
the gypsy woman thing there. I don't believe that Bernie Sanders first of all, like the entire messaging of the Harris campaign was, I'm fighting for the middle class. I'm fighting on behalf of you, right? There's
Right.
this whole like the argument whenever Democrats lose a race, the argument from the progressive faction is, you didn't go progressive enough. You didn't do what we want enough. Never mind the fact that she fairly was. And it's very interesting to watch Liz Cheney turn into the favorite scapegoat. I don't think Liz Cheney added a lot of votes to the Harris, pile. I also don't think she detracted anybody or sent and drove anybody away from the Harris pile.
I think she was totally irrelevant.
Yeah, our mutual friend Mary Catherine Ham, I think, and I think I'm attributing this correctly, pointed out that, like, look, the Nikki Haley, never Trump, suburban hawkish, that's a more white collar crowd than the blue collar crowd, and whether the Harris campaign and Democrats are more comfortable talking to conservative white collar never Trump voters than they are voting to blue collar voters, even if they're more Democratic leaning. That, in other words, like the class sensibilities are such a strong factor there that they couldn't do a John Fetterman style campaign, that they don't want to talk to guys who look like John Fetterman. It's a fascinating kind of argument there. I also kind of think there's the New York Times has this great column that I'm going to be writing about later today, pointing out that, like, we've been saying how do you spend $1 billion and lose? Well, you add up everything, it's probably closer to $2 billion, going back to when Biden had the Biden campaign.
Astounding sum of cash.
Yes. Right? And people are saying, like, on the one hand, that's a really bad reflection on Kamala Harris. On the other point, though, it does indicate that, like, there was no one decision that would have reversed this election. That there was no, if they'd spent more here, or if she'd spent more time in Wisconsin or something like that. She was not one area. The Walls pick was bad, but I thought Shapiro would have been a better pick. But I don't think Shapiro. Maybe he flips Pennsylvania. I don't think he flips all 7, swing states, or even the 3 swing states. So, like, the interesting thing is, like, you have financial advantage, and arguably none of it matter. That by the time,
if you've got right track, wrong track, the way it was almost an impossible landscape for any incumbent. And Kamala Harris is an incumbent, so she was fighting an uphill battle all the way. Just closing question, because we're almost out of time. You, as you mentioned up front, you are part of the Never Trump world, and I understand that. Take that into account. But of the 25 picks that the president has made thus far, we can certainly focus on the 3 or 4 that we are all going to focus on because we don't like those picks. But if you take the sum of all of the picks that he's made thus far, better than expected, about what you expected, or worse than you expected, Jim Geraghty?
Oh, until those 3 or 4, it was considerably better than expected. If you told me you were going to get Marco Rubio as Secretary of State,
right,
I would have rested a lot easier. And I know a few folks who are on the more, I don't know, you want to say dovish or isolationist or non-hawkish wing of the GOP, who saw that and were like, wait, this is a Nikki Haley pick. What are we talking about? Why did we elect Trump? Now we've got some other people in there who are a little more along that dovish or isolationist line. No, I have a piece that'll be the next issue of the magazine. It will be the optimistic Never Trump assessment of that 9 things you're probably going to get out of a Trump presidency that are good for conservatives, even if you think as a.
And I will read every word of that, because that is a conversation that needs to be had.